hanging out for a lot of investors out there is the issue of indigenization and nationalization, some would like to call it. What exactly is the situation in regards to that, and what message is the country sending to international investors?
I think the only challenge we're having around indigenization and empowerment, and it's not nationalization, it's empowerment,
right,
is the packaging and marketing of the concept. It's not a new concept. It was done in South Africa. It is being done in South Africa. It's done in America. It's done in India.
Sure.
What we need to do is to be clever about how we package it, how we explain it,
right, because
sometimes perception becomes reality. The first point to make is that it is not sustainable in a country to have the majority of the people as spectators in the economy. Stability in the long run is established if the majority are players in the economy.
Sure.
And that is the theoretical and philosophical basis for empowerment.
Sure.
What we need to do is to make sure we do it in a creative manner, where we are doing a sector by sector analysis, where we are flexible,
right,
but making sure that we don't have anyone taking assets for free. In other words, if there's going to be empowerment, there must be the buying of the shares of those companies,
right,
in a slow and organized way. India, for example, has a number like 29%. You can't own more than 29% in India, and all the global financial institutions are there in India. We are seeing 49%. So there's nothing new here. More importantly, we are also saying that it is important that it is broad-based, not just a few
individuals,
but the majority, the workers, the women, and the young people.
But the problem, I think, for many international investors is if I'm coming in with my capital and I want to start a project, now how feasible is it that I would come and hand over half of that control, in fact, of the project to a local investor? Why would I risk my capital with a person perhaps who doesn't have the experience, who I don't know?
I'll give you a counter question.
Please.
Why would I, as an investor, as a financial institution, go into India, where I can only control 29% and 71% goes to the local? What I'm saying is a mute question.
Sure.
If there's a rational and logical reason why a global financial institution like Old Mutual would go into India and only own 29% and surrender 71%, that answers your question. But however, let me say this is atmospherics. These are issues that are political. When you look at the economy, the control is not given for free. The control is negotiated and paid for. However, we are emphasizing that we must also grow the economy, grow the cake. We can't just cut the cake apart and not grow the economy, entrepreneurship, new jobs, new factories. But I'm saying philosophically, the question you're asking is an irrelevant question, because it was answered in South Africa, it was answered in India. If it was answered in India, it can be answered in Zimbabwe.
Can I make 2 points? First of all, India is not in Zimbabwe's position. India is an established democracy with an established economy that does not need the large amounts of capital that we're looking for in Zimbabwe. Secondly, India is a 1 billion people market, whereas we're talking about 13, 12 million people.
Who told you we're talking about that? No, let's dismiss that with the contempt that it deserves. We are talking about regional economies now. We're talking about the SADC framework, the COMESA framework. So insofar as we're concerned, we are now pushing for what we call regional attractiveness. We're now pushing for what we call regional competitiveness. We are going to harmonize our economies so that the indigenization policy in Zimbabwe is upgraded to a regional level. So when you come to the region of COMESA, you're talking about 200 million people.
Sure.
And so the numbers game is not an argument that is valid. However, what we're saying is let's not be bogged down on trivial matters. In Zimbabwe, we've established political stability, we've established economic stability. With 500 million% inflation in the year 2008, we're now to 3%. The conditions in the country are now favorable for investors to come through. We as a government are moving from stabilization economics to growth economics, where we're now saying investors must come in, lines of credit must come through. Indigenization is only one aspect, and we as Zimbabweans are not interested in discussing indigenization in isolation to the broader economic agenda of making Zimbabwe a globally competitive economy.
Unfortunately, which is hanging up. But can I put my last question to you? I was going to ask you, in fact, what are you doing as the government of Zimbabwe to encourage investors to come in? What measures are you putting in place? What incentives are you looking at in terms of trying to bring people into the country?
We're working on our tariffs, working on our taxation, we're working on creating export processing zones, we're working on triple Ps, the partnerships that allows the private investor to come into energy, the private investor to come into water, the private investor to come into telecoms, into public works, into transportation. We are creating an enabling environment by opening up our economy. We used to have a lot of state control, parastatal, government running everything. We are shifting our mindset to enable the investor to go into non-traditional areas. We are encouraging investors to come into mining. We are saying diamonds, gold, copper, tin, all these minerals are available in the country. But more than that, we're saying come and set up factories for processing, come and set up factories to manufacture gadgets in the country. So we are trying to do this by putting in place the framework, the short-term economic recovery plan, the medium-term plan, the national vision of 30 years, the brand of the country, a 20-year project. All these activities are meant to create a conducive environment in our country where investors can come. By the way, we want investors to come and make a profit in our country. We don't want them to come for charity. We are moving away from donor-based economics. We're moving away from aid and donations to investment.